Monday morning. We must get back to the business of the business sessions, and we have a power session coming up your way with the lemon tree case study presented by Mr. Patu Keswani. Mr. Patu Keswani walked into the FHRI Hall of Fame on the first day of the convention, but it is my pleasant duty to reintroduce him formally, although he needs no introduction to anybody who may be within any reasonable radius of this convention. Patu Keswani is a BTech from IIT Delhi and an MBA from IIM Kolkata, who had 15 years of experience with the Taj Group of Hotels, which included his stint as the Chief Operating Officer of the Taj Business Hotels and Senior Vice President of Special Projects. Patu Keswani worked with A.T. Kearney Limited as Director of their India operations and eventually promoted Lemon Tree Hotels, one of India's finest chain of moderately priced full-service hotels for business and leisure travelers. Like their founder and the fruit they are named after, the Lemon Tree Hotels are fresh, cool, sparkling with zest, and raring to expand. I would also like to introduce to all of you the session chairman, Shri Kamlesh Barot, Executive Committee member of FHRAI. And before I hand over the proceedings to the moderator, may I request a small bouquet of flowers to be reached to Session Chairman Shri Kamlesh Barot, who will be welcoming Shri Patu Keswani.
I'd like to take the permission of the delegates. I'm not asking the President FHRI or the Secretary General FHRI. Wouldn't we like to hear the delegates more than doing this flower business and memento business and spending 15 minutes there? All of you all in concurrence, raise your hands up. If you allow me, Mr. Keswani. We'll do the entire formalities backstage once we finish the session. Thank you, sir. Friends, the introduction of Mr. Keswani is something that is illustrious. We take this session forward by not giving long speeches. I hand over the floor to Mr. Manoj Bhatia to formally do the moderation and hand over the proceedings to our moderator, Mr. Patu Keswani.
Good morning, folks. I think the way we'll go forward this morning is we'll get Mr. Keswani to do his presentation. Post the presentation, we will then take questions, some from the audience and some from the stage up here. Basic idea is obviously all of us are very keen how Mr. Keswani started his organization after having been a career hotelier with the Taj. It's like, once you join the Taj, you normally never leave the Taj. And it's phenomenal what he has achieved in such a short period of time. So Mr. Keswani, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. Oops. I've put together a small presentation. It's not so small, it'll take about 30 minutes. What I thought I would cover, because I find that in India, we are not so aware of what the real development of the hotel market is globally. I thought that the structure would be, I would briefly start with what's happening globally, go on to what is happening in India, and then from that derive how and why Lemon Tree came about and another offshoot company of mine, which is the Red Fox Hotels. So we'll start. Okay, if you look at this first slide, basically globally there are about 20 million rooms. And with the population of the globe as it is at present, there are approximately 30 rooms for 10,000 population. If you look at the US, which I will get to in greater detail later, the US has 5.5 billion rooms for 307 million population, which is roughly 180 rooms for 10,000. And India has only one room for 10,000. So if you look at it from a global perspective, India is 1/30th the average of the world, and in fact only 0.5% of the US penetration. I am now going to come to specifically some of the top hotel chains. If you see the top 3 hotel chains in the world, and typically these chains are mostly managers and brand of they flag hotels. The top 3 chains account for about 10% of the global hotel supply. But if you look at ownership of rooms, which is really what denotes really control in India, the top 3 hotel chains internationally account for about 2% of global supply. And in India, the top 2 chains, which is the Taj and the Oberoi, have only 4,000 and 2,000 rooms. And that is the amazing statistic, because after 100 years of operations, Taj, which is a globally recognized chain, has only 4,000 owned rooms. Now I've just taken some figures from FHRAI on their membership. There are 72,000 rooms which are classified who are FHRAI members, and 2/3 of them are 5-star or 4-star, which means the top 2 categories account for 2/3 of the total supply. It is an amazing statistic in India. It's like saying that all the airlines in India, 2/3 of their seats are business class and 1/3 is economy. So obviously there are reasons for it, and this is what I'm going to touch upon, and why Lemon Tree came to meet the requirement really at the mid-scale level. Okay, now globally the hotel industry is actually 3 separate industries. In India it is combined. There is no sophistication in the real estate asset classes, and the split of the hotel sector into 3 subsectors has not yet happened. But globally there are individual groups of companies or individuals who own the asset. There is a separate group that manages the asset, and finally there is a third group that flags the asset or owns the brand. And also internationally there are 4 broad price points. The first price point is luxury or deluxe, which is typically the 5-star or better. Then there is upscale, which is 4-star. There is mid-scale, which is 3-star, and then there is economy / budget, which is 1 and 2-star. If I compare the US with India, I think the whole picture of what is happening in India and where India is going to move to will get clear. If you look at penetration, India is 0.5% of the US, 1 for 180 rooms there. The major difference between India and the US, interestingly, is the US is service focused, India is product focused. Now, the reason for this is very simple. And from this, in fact, the whole Indian hotel sector has derived. The US is basically differentiates its 4 service points, its 4 product points on service. This is because the cost of product in the US is very low. As you can see, there are 5.5 million rooms in the US, and the major reason for this is it is extremely easy to put up hotels there. Specifically, if you've tied up with a brand, and you are willing to put in a few $1,000,000, you can put up a hotel in New York. Incidentally, I'm putting up a hotel in New York, and I'm amazed at the difference between India and the US. The cost of debt is very low, but the leverage that you are permitted is very high. That is the borrowings that you can take. The repayment period is 25 years. So if you put in $1, you can borrow $4. And effectively the project, if it gives you a return of 7%, is viable. This is the US situation. So if everybody can put up hotels this easily in the US, the power that in the hotel business lies with the brand, because the brand is the only agency that can bring you top line. That's why in the US, brands have the power, hotels are built to their specifications, and the main differentiation between a 5-star and a 3-star will be much more on service than on product. Now, India is exactly the reverse. In India, there are very few rooms. There are only 1 room per 10,000 population, and the power resides with the asset owner. The reason that there are such few rooms, as we all know, is the very high cost of land, the very expensive debt that is available, the short-term debt effectively, the fact that it takes a very long time to manage the government approvals, the opacity of the approvals, the corruption that there is. And last is, of course, that we have to provide our own infrastructure, which in the US is taken for granted. So because of these high barriers to entry, in India, the power lies with the asset owners, and this is why, in my opinion, there are two interesting derivations which I'll come to. One is that in India, brands cannot be formed without owning the hotel. Because if you are going to manage other people's hotels, you will never get a hotel to your specifications, nor will you be able to provide the service that you require. Second observation I have in this context is, I do not see how service apartments can work in India. Because I looked at it myself, and in the US, what they are offering you is more space, which is cheap, for less service, which is expensive. In India, how can you offer more space in a service apartment, which is the expensive component, and give less of what is the cheap component? So logically, I do not see, incidentally, service apartments taking off, but that's just an observation. Anyway, the bottom line here is that after the differentiation on service and product, the other interesting thing in the Indian market is about 70% of the hotels are owned by individuals or by real estate developers. It's not owned by financial institutions, which is the normal case abroad. It is owned by individuals, and these individuals build hotel to their own specs. As a result, while 70% of the US is branded, it's less than 25% in India. The rest are obvious, the remaining points I've drawn, but one other point I want to draw your attention to is the fact that in India, there is an inverted pyramid of supply. 2/3 of your supply, as I earlier pointed out, is deluxe or upscale. And in the US, it is exactly the reverse. So, as I've covered these points, I think we can go forward. So now we will come specifically to the Indian hotel industry. I was reading some statistics and trying to put them in here. Ministry of Tourism estimates that there will be 675 million domestic tourists in India this year and about 10 million foreign tourists. Now I don't know whether we will achieve these figures, but what is the fact of industry? I was reading some